The modern presupposition is that it is simply incompatible with freedom for our will to be moved, even moved by God. But Aquinas has an older and, in fact, much richer and deeper account of human freedom. We need to unpack it a little bit. First, the modern understanding. Freedom in a modern understanding often means to choose without constraint, to opt for whatever I determine, or to put it a little more technically, to choose between contraries. So, I walk into a restaurant and I look at the menu. I have a range of possibilities before me. I could eat chicken or beef or even fish, and I opt for whatever I choose. And if anyone tells me what to choose, or pushes me to choose one option rather than another, then it seems like my freedom has been limited or diminished. Now, this modern understanding of the nature of freedom is only partial, and Aquinas would say it's a misleading description of human action. So by thinking with Aquinas, we can go deeper in understanding the human will and thus human freedom. St. Thomas Aquinas would say, in every choice we make, we're aiming at something that we regard as good. And if we don't regard something as good in at least some respect, we'll never choose it. Our will, therefore, is not primarily a faculty of choosing, of opting between contraries. Choice is only one of the acts of the will. The more fundamental feature of the will is that it is a faculty of desiring, or even of loving. The will is a rational appetite, and it desires, it hungers for the good. Whatever our minds grasp as good for me, especially as good for me here and now, that is what I will in some measure will for myself. Further, we see that our lives are not simply a series of one individual choice after another. Yesterday I chose beef, today I choose fish. In fact, we engage in larger projects. We aim at some goal, and we make many choices in order to arrive at it. So, for example, a student who's going off to university is aiming at obtaining a degree. And so she makes many individual choices in service of that goal. She registers for her classes, she buys her books, she studies for her exams. And an athlete who wants to compete in the Olympics, he'll get up early in the morning in order to train, he might lift weights, eat a special diet, and even if sometimes he doesn't feel like doing those things, he still chooses to do them because his mind apprehends his training as good in view of his end, competing in the Olympics. So he chooses those things freely because his will is focused on the end and regards this training as a good means, or the best means, to get to what he desires. So if we think about this, we begin to see that freedom, or our act of free choice, is something that emerges from the will as it desires some end as good. And in view of what we desire, we freely choose a fitting action that will lead us to our end. Aquinas would tell us at this point to step back and look at the many ends or goals that human beings can set for themselves and the many individual choices they might make to reach those ends. Some ends are consistent with human flourishing or happiness. But there are other goals that we might mistakenly set out to pursue, but that will only lead us to frustration. Aquinas thinks, for example, that pursuing money or power or fame or honor, if you make it your ultimate end, these things, they will not make you truly happy. Whenever we choose a course of action in pursuit of some end that's unworthy of us, something that's not leading us to our true flourishing, we're in a sense acting freely. Yes, it's true, but also, in truth, the more we head away from what's truly good for us, the more limited our lives become. It's possible for you freely to choose to use heroin, for example, the first time you use it. But as you make the choice again and again, most people will find themselves increasingly unfree. Their will become chained to this desire, and it's a desire that's not worthy of the human creature made in the image of God. What will make us truly happy? In the final analysis, only God is sufficient to quell all our desires, to satisfy us completely, so that there's nothing more left to desire. So only God can be our final end, Aquinas says. And this is the true reason for our freedom, and the only way for our freedom to reach its full amplitude and power. We have the powers of intellect and will so that in this life we would freely know God by faith and love him by supernatural charity. But if we use those powers in order to pursue something incompatible with God, then we're in fact reducing the scope of the human person. We're enchaining our wills so that they'll be addicted to what is not good for us. According to Aquinas, every act of sin is a bit like taking heroin. It turns us away from God, our true good, and the only one who can make us truly happy. And what is more, our wills then become focused on some partial created thing, pleasure or money or honor or our own selves, in such a way that we become chained to these things, fixated on them. Indeed, in creating us, God has already ordered us to certain natural goods, which can lead us to some measure of natural happiness, things like the good of friendship, family life, of knowing the truth, living well and according to virtue. The desires for these things are natural to human beings, and our nature is in principle capable of freely choosing the natural means that will lead us towards them. But the highest good of the human person is to dwell in eternal life with God, and this is something that is infinitely above our natural capacity. But God, by the gift of his grace that comes to us from Christ, can freely move us to desire and to choose to love God above all things, to believe the words of Christ, to entrust ourselves to the power of his sacraments, to profess the faith of the Church. And when we do these things, we are in fact experiencing what our freedom was made for, in its full amplitude, to know and thus to love the supreme good for its own sake.
Why on earth these people insist on going there, I can't imagine. They won't like it. They would be much more comfortable staying here.
What? They like this place?
As much as they'd like anything. With all the time one would have here, I believe I could still make something of him. Oh, he's not fit to be on his own. Put me in charge of him. He wants firm handling. After all, I know him better than you do. Give him to me. Do you hear? Don't consult him. Just give him to me. I'm his wife, aren't I? Oh, it was only the beginning. No, there's still lots more that I still want to do with him. Please, please. I'm so miserable. I simply must have someone to do things to.
It's all propaganda. There's no question of us staying. It takes all your time just to walk on the grass. You can't eat the fruit. You can't drink the water. A human being couldn't live here. All that idea of staying, it's only an advertisement stunt.
Then why did you come?
I don't know. Just to have a look around. I like to see things for myself. Wherever I've been, I've always had a look at anything that's being cracked up. When I was out east, I went to see Beijing. Nothing to it, just one damn wall against another tourist trap.
Where you going? Who are you?
The one who was sent for you.
For me?
I'm George.
I don't know you.
George MacDonald.
George MacDonald. Oh, the writer. Oh, pardon me, sir, I'm so sorry. I've read everything you've ever written.
Oh, thank you.
And I must tell you this. Your book, Fantasties, was an epiphany. My imagination was forever changed.
Oh, that's just why I'm here. I'm already well acquainted with the details of your life.
Then you can tell me. At least you won't deceive me. The ghosts. Do any of us stay? Can we stay? Is there really a way out of hell into heaven?
Well, my capacity now as auxiliary bishop out in LA, I have the Santa Barbara pastoral region, which is by far the biggest in area of all the regions. It covers 2 counties. And the result is I got to drive a lot, so I'm in the car all the time. So I've kind of recovered the art of listening to books on tape, I call them, and it's totally outdated, audible books, And one of them is, I listened to recently was C.S. Lewis's great kind of theological fantasy called The Great Divorce. And it was a joy to listen to it again. I think I read it many years ago, but largely had forgotten it. So it's fresh in my mind. And, he has such a gift for combining high theology with very vivid imagination that makes his books very memorable. Just a couple things that stayed in my mind from this I want to share with you, really just to encourage you to pick the book up, or maybe as I did, listen to it. It's a meditation, as you know, on what the medievals called the refrigerium, which is the idea of the souls in hell getting a kind of vacation once in a while. They get a refreshment, a break when they can come up to heaven. So Lewis imagines some of the souls in hell getting on a kind of bus, but the bus takes off from the dreary streets of hell and flies up through the sky and then lands in this beautiful country, which they recognize in time to be the sort of forecourt of heaven. And the idea is during the refrigerium, the souls from hell come up. And then the great spirits from heaven come to meet them. And they're trying to convince them. They're trying to lure them into heaven. So that's the drama of the book, is as he calls them the ghosts of hell meet the spirits of heaven and what happens in those dynamics. And you get a lot of reflection about the nature of sin, about grace, about heaven, hell, purgatory, all of that. So just 3 things from the book that have really stayed in my mind. The first one is the wonderful play between the grandeur and nothingness of hell. So as the book opens up, he's in the dreary streets of hell. He's wandered a long time to get to this bus stop. He says that hell spreads out like this infinitely large city. And the reason is obvious. People are always fighting in hell. So each soul wants to get as far away from the others as possible. So the houses just spread out ever further. And he says that it might take centuries for a given ghost to make his way to the bus stop. That's how big hell is. Then when they take off, they fly up way through the sky, long distance, before they get to heaven, right? So you get the impression of hell is a really big, impressive place. So as the narrator is talking to one of the spirits in heaven when he gets there, he says, where exactly did we come from? Where did that bus get off? Where did it stop? And the spirit in heaven says, or he takes a little blade of grass, one blade of grass. And then using the tip of the single blade of grass, he indicates a little, barely visible fissure in the ground, a little crack that he indicates with the tip of a blade of grass. He said, that's where you came through. He said, what are you talking about? That's right. Hell is giant, it's huge. No, that's where you came through. In other words, from the standpoint of heaven, see, which means reality, hell is like nothing. It's like non-being. Augustine said, sin is a state of being curvatus in se, right? I'm caved in around myself. My world becomes super small. Where the saint has the magna anima, right? The great soul, because it's open to reality. It's the grandeur of heaven. Compared to which hell is like this little tiny, barely perceptible crack in the ground. We who are living in hell, and all of us sinners do to varying degrees, we think it's a big deal, right? My ego and my plans and my life, but it's like nothing. It's nothing. Surrender to love and your world opens up. That's the point, Here's a second image I love from it. One of the ghosts from hell shows up. And on his shoulder is this little kind of creepy reptile, this kind of creepy, slimy creature. And the creature is whispering in his ear, telling him things. Over to him comes this great angel, a great angelic spirit. And the guy kind of pulls back from the angel. And the angel looks at the reptile, and he brings his hands near it like this. And he says, "May I kill it?" And the guy says, no, I don't want to kill it. I mean, I know he's a little difficult, and I know he's always bossing me around, but no, I don't want you to kill it. May I kill it? Well, no, I don't want killing. I mean, he's difficult. I wish you could do something about him, but may I kill it? And so finally, the spirit, the ghost, says, yes, he acquiesces, and the angel crushes the reptile. But then the narrator notices, at that moment, his soul, and the souls are all kind of cramped and warped, they're small, At that moment, he begins to take on thickness and height and substance. And then the reptile, which had been kind of thrown to the side, actually begins to change now and is transformed into this mighty, beautiful stallion, upon which the man then jumps and rides off toward the mountains. So, what does that mean? Well, it becomes clear that this little reptile stands for lust. This little kind of creepy thing that's making suggestions all the time, and actually resulting in the shrinking down of this person. Right? The angel, standing for the power of God here, wants to kill that off. You got to get rid of it. But notice, please, and Lewis is so strong on this, he has to ask permission. He can't just do it. Even though it's the best thing possible for this guy, he has to have his permission. May I kill it? He's uncompromising. He's not going to argue with it. May I kill it? But may I kill it? And only when the man gives his permission can the angel do his work. But then notice what happens. Not only does the man grow in grandeur, but that lust is transfigured into what it was meant to be, which is this sort of great stallion of erotic desire. See, erotic desire is a great thing. It gives us all of our power, all of our energy, our verve, our purpose. It becomes a mighty stallion that we can ride to the mountains, which stand for the realm of God in Lewis. It's a great image, isn't it? Because we all have it to some degree. We got this creepy little thing on our shoulder. Maybe say to God, yes, you may kill it. Yes, I give you permission. And see what happens. Here's the last one. The narrator sees coming from the distance this beautiful, stately procession. There's a woman who's up on a sedia gestatoria on this high chair, and there's a great procession before her, and then all these angels and spirits around her, praising her and honoring her. So right away he thinks, oh, could this be the Blessed Mother? And his guide says, oh no, it's a woman named Sarah Smith. Who's Sarah Smith? Well, on Earth, the guide says she was a nobody. No one knew her on Earth. She was a woman that ran a boarding house or something in an ordinary city in England. She has the most ordinary name you can imagine, Sarah Smith, right? But he said everybody that she met became her son or daughter. She was so loving and brought them to life. Even the animals that she came across were cared for and they were enlivened by her. She was a life giver in the most radical way. No one on the earth knew her. No historian would write about her. She had no fame, no honor, no glory. But in the eyes of heaven, she's honored to the nth degree. There's a lot more to that story, but I just want to focus on that part of it, because what a wreck we get into when we just fuss about worldly honors all the time. What's the world think of me? Well, I mean, finally, who cares? The world, which passes away. How long is our life? 70 years, 80 for those who are strong, the Bible says. It comes and goes. Maybe you're honored by the very worst people. Maybe the biggest idiots in society are honoring you. Why are you fussing with worldly honors? Rather, as Jesus says, don't store up treasure on earth, store up treasure in heaven. Don't worry about honors on earth. Worry about being honored in heaven. There's a whole spiritual revolution, I think, in that image, if we let it sink in. All right, I've given you just a little tiny hint of the riches of this great book, The Great Divorce. Do read it or listen to it. It's one of the great explorations, I think, of the spiritual life, and especially of what finally matters. So go get The Great Divorce.